Hello and welcome to another episode of Erongo Talk. I'm your host, Irene-Mari van der Walt, and I'm joining you all the way from the Rojo Pub and Restaurant in Walvis Bay today. In today's episode, we will be chatting with Almarie Mostert, the principal of Stepping Stone Special Education School in Swakopmund, and she's going to be telling us a little bit about the effect that the pandemic has had on her students and on her school, as well as how the pandemic has shifted their plans to build a school specifically for children with special needs. As always, I will bring you the news, weather, and tides, so stay with us. We'll be right back. So for today's news, I'm joining you from the bar in the newly renovated Rojo's Pub and Restaurant in Walvis Bay. And before I kick off with our news, please be reminded that you can be on the lookout for a pop-up question that you can answer to win $1,000 off your accommodation for your next trip. Then in our first story for today, grade 4, 5 and 6 learners were welcomed back on school on Monday. Government schools have opted to divide the children into groups to allow them to come to school on alternative days. This method of teaching is to ensure that social distancing protocols are adhered to. According to the Deputy Director of Education, Natalia Guriras, most primary schools have started and are coping with the situation. She, however, said that learners not wearing proper face masks and not maintaining social distancing remains a challenge. She was quoted in saying, "The thermoguns provided by government are not effective, with schools being in dire need of more of these devices. There's shortages of textbooks. Some learners lost their exercise books while at home. Additionally, learners need more time to get accustomed to the new setup at school, while other schools prepare timetables in advance and started with teaching and learning on the 14th of September 2020. She added that a few schools had experienced congestion of ablution facilities due to huge numbers and said that the attendance for grades 4 to 6 on the first day for most schools was satisfactory. The Omaruru circuit seems to be the most troubled circuit in education, as the Deputy Director said that 12 schools have started with face-to-face learning and teaching in the circuit. There are, however, almost 5 schools in the Omaruru circuit that do not have potable water or ablution facilities. But you can check out all the educational circuits and their troubles and triumphs in restarting face-to-face education at our website, www.erongo.com.na. Then, in another story, an employee of the CGN Swakopmund uranium mine passed away after he collapsed while working at the mine on Saturday, Chief Executive Kai Yusheng confirmed. While being transported from the site to Swakopmund for further medical care, the employee passed away. The mine will cooperate with the authorities to determine the cause of death, he said. He said that since the incident, all site operation had been ceased until the conclusion of the preliminary investigation, and all relevant authorities are informed. Operations were stopped, the scene secured, and all necessary communications to the family and authorities were made. Preliminary investigations were carried out, and further communications to the relevant authorities based on the preliminary investigations have been done. According to Shang, 3 employees were busy installing a scrubber recycling pump at the acid plant at the mine at about 2 o'clock. The deceased and his colleagues went to assess the area and the job commenced. While working, it was determined that additional tools were required. The deceased, who did not show or mention anything abnormal, began walking away to fetch the required tools. After a few meters, he requested that one of his colleagues, who was close by, to come and support him. He took out his asthma inhaler and tried to use it, but failed. His colleagues then tried to help. Shortly afterwards, the deceased collapsed and became unresponsive. According to information obtained during the preliminary internal investigation, the deceased collapsed and was tended to by on-site paramedics. Then on to your crime report for the weekend. It was a bloody weekend for the Erongo region, with an alleged gang rape and a murder reported in the first weekend after the state of emergency lapped. Deputy Commissioner Erastus Ikuyu, the regional crime coordinator, confirmed that the police are investigating a case of murder after a 28-year-old man was stabbed with a broken bottle. The incident occurred in front of a bar in Mondesa, Swakopmund, between about 10 o'clock Saturday evening and 11 o'clock Saturday evening. The deceased was allegedly involved in an altercation with a 26-year-old suspect who stabbed him on the left side of his neck. The victim died on scene. The suspect was arrested at the scene and he will appear in the Swakopmund Magistrates Court today. The deceased was identified and his next of kin have been informed. On to some more tragic news. A woman was allegedly gang raped by two men between about 5 o'clock Saturday morning and 6 o'clock Saturday morning at the coast. According to Ikuyu, the incident happened in an open area between Frederere Primary School and Festus Conte Primary School in Mondesa. The 23-year-old victim was coming home from a friend's house in Tamareskia, where they had been having a good time. She was on her way home on foot when a man allegedly approached her and asked for a cell phone. The victim started fighting this person, and while doing so, another three men joined the attack on her. That obviously ended very tragically for her. And it does not stop, where a 2-month-old baby sustained serious injuries when the bed he was sleeping on caught fire in the DRC location in Swakopmund. The incident occurred about 9 o'clock on Friday night. This fire started while the boy's parents were in the living room of the ghetto. And then a case of concealment of birth is being investigated after a body of a baby girl was discovered among the rubbish in a skip bin in Arandis. Ikuyu said that an employee of the Arandis Town Council, who was cleaning in the open space next to the SWAPO office, made the gruesome discovery and alerted the police. Then, with freedom comes responsibility. So, Inspector Eleni Shapumba, the commander of community affairs in the Erongo region, said that the public should remember that with freedom comes responsibility. It simply boils down to a lack of responsibility. We cannot put restrictions or curfew in place just because a few individuals cannot behave themselves. People should appreciate the freedom but exercise responsibility. At the same time, the public have the duty to protect themselves from danger as well. Since the state of emergency lapsed and only a few restrictions remain, this should shape our attitudes, he said. Shapumba said that the police have come across many members of the public not wearing their masks on a number of occasions since the expiration of the state of emergency. The wearing of masks remains mandatory. Why should the police tell you to wear your mask? Act responsibly. Why do you need to be told to behave yourself? And that concludes our news for today. So joining us today is Almarie Mostert, the principal of Stepping Stone Special Education School in Swakopmund. Hi Almarie, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you guys?
Well, I'm fine. So, Almarie, I want to know from you, Stepping Stones was planning on building a new school building with funds that you got from the Mad Swimmers recently, a couple months ago. And I believe these funds have had to go to your students in the time of challenge. Could you tell us a little bit about those challenges?
Yes, so some of our students are already on sponsorship to be at school and to access the school. Unfortunately, we do have to ask school fees because we don't get any financial support from the education department, and also to have the quality service that we have and the ratio of qualified personnel to children, we have to ask private school fees, or the amount of private school fees. And so, of course, being a school for children with autism, we want to take any child with autism or related difficulties. So some of our kids' families, of course, can't afford it. Yes. And we've had this initiative of sponsoring children since last year, and we've had this year we've had 5 children on sponsorship, some local sponsorship, some international sponsorship. So those sponsorships have been allocated to the children individually. So we've actually lost 3 of those sponsorships. In the end, we only have 3 children that has been able to access the resources and paid school fees for this time. Mm-hmm. The other 2 full-time sponsors we lost due to COVID. That's international sponsors, so we've lost that. And then we've had a few parents who've actually been impacted by the whole, whether it's yes, it's probably because of lockdown. 2 parents I can think of straight away works in hospitality. So for those children, we've had to help their families to be able to afford the school fees within this time. And in the beginning, we didn't know how long it was going to last. So when with our previous interview, we said that some of the sponsors that came from Mad Swimmers fundraiser will go towards helping these families throughout this pandemic. And then, of course, it lasted. The lockdown lasted quite long, and then the Erongo lockdown was extended, and so on. So we've actually used that funds to support 5 families, 2 who lost their sponsors from Germany, and then 2 whose parents lost their jobs, and then a third whose parents they have a local business in Mondesa, but for that child, the parents were able to pay some of the school fees. So in the end, we helped 5 children to be here at school, to access the resources. Teachers in the lockdown, teachers went to visit them, work was sent to them, USBs was sent to them, and videos recorded every day.
Yes, of course. So then I believe children with autism very much require a routine, and
Yes.
I can think that the lockdown measures have completely just thrown that routine out the window. What are some of the struggles you guys had with your students in this time?
A variety of challenges. Some children really actually kind of surprised us and took it more as a holiday, and it went okay. But there's quite a number of our children who struggled, whose parents from the start said the unknown, the unknowing, especially our more able mainstream children who understands the situation better, but still struggle to cope with the idea of, but when? Mm-hmm. And if not now, when? That was a big struggle, especially for our grade 6s and grade 5s, a big struggle of when will we return to school. So with them, we started straight away with digital teaching. It was a challenge also for some of our teachers because they are not used to that, but we've had to start straight away with them. It was a challenge because some parents aren't able to access the WhatsApp videos, or we didn't even do a platform like Google Classroom or Zoom or anything like that because data for the parents, it was too difficult. So we tried to do videos as much as possible. So for them, we started right away. For our children who are maybe less aware of what's going on in the world and just their world around them, they struggled. A lot of them struggled. A lot of them, especially those whose parents still had to go to work or still had to do something to support the family and could not stay with the kids at home, and they had to stay with siblings, or they had to go and stay with a grandma or grandpa. Those children really struggled. They struggled because all of a sudden there was a lack of routine without prior warning and without a preparation for the parents or the school. Mm-hmm. So we dived straight into trying to work through videos, but they really could not understand how and why to watch my teacher on the mobile or on the TV for those who we put the videos on the screen. So some children were able to watch and some weren't. Then we started with some of the students whose parents gave permission that we as teachers would go and visit them on a one-to-one basis. And we came to, especially after the 5th of May, when the government said, the education department said that teachers have to get back to work, preparing work for teachers, for students, and trying to get that work to the children. We actually came and we met as teachers, and we each so we kind of divided the kids up and said, okay, you're going to go to those 3 every day, you're going to go to those 3, you're going to go to those 3, and we had to logistically work it out, who's going to drop off who, where, who's going to be able to walk to who, and so on. Yeah. And of course we do have some children in Langstrand and in Walvis, so we had to organize for them as well. So our teachers went to visit them with physical resources, and I have to say that was better, but that's also the time we really picked up what was not working or what the kids struggled with. So we've had a few kids who actually, we've got one little boy who started self-injurious behavior, which he never did before. I know some children with autism do self-harm behavior, but this boy never did before. And he started biting his hands, hitting his head, and he's was seen by one of our more behavior qualified teachers. He is not back yet. She still sees him 3 days a week in the afternoons. He's really struggling. So we're going to work with a plan to get him back integrated back into school. So there's been really tough times. The teenagers, the grade sixes, have been asking why did Corona happen? And we're trying to explain to them that we don't know and we can't explain it. And so they have questions and frustrations. But
I think at this point we all share their sentiment. Why did Corona happen? Can't we just go back into a routine? And then I want to know from you, obviously children with autism have these questions about why, So how are you teaching them the use of masks, for example, and sanitizing your hands and social distance and those kinds of things?
So we use a lot of visuals. Before we got our essential license to be back on site, we had to share it digitally, but we also shared it when we went to visit the children. So we have to use physical resources and we have to use visual resources. We use social stories as well, especially for wearing masks and social distancing, keeping your distance. We have games we play. And for the more able children, the children who understand things a little bit better, we've been giving them stories to explain actually what the virus is, why we don't want to get or use contaminated things, why we need to sanitize the class the whole time, why we need to wear our masks. But for the other children who don't really understand that, we've had to do it physically with teddy bears. We've got on our cupboards photos of the children, their face, and then putting a paper mask on to practice looking at us with a mask. We've used mirrors. We've had to use mirrors on putting on your mask, taking off. We play with these little ones in here. We play a peekaboo game as well. But it is tough because they don't really understand why I, as a teacher, have to wear it as well. So they want to pull it off very, very often. So for one little boy he loves soft toys. So we have a mask, it's hanging there by the bags, and then he has his soft toys. So in the morning when he comes in, we have to put it on the soft toy. The other day, the soft toy didn't have ears because every day he has different kind of soft toys he brings in, and we had to make a plan tying the mask in a different way. So yes, it is really playing games. Even though they don't really understand why they have to wear it, we still have to make sure they wear it. Yes. As I said before, with the little ones, the 5-year-olds, the 3-year-olds, we are having more. It's harder for them. Our older children have really surprised me. Our children I am actually never surprised. They continue to amaze me. The children who are working at a lower functioning level, but the older children, 10, 11 years old, 9, 10 and 11 years old, they have all been wearing their masks.
That's wonderful.
All of them. And we just started with social stories, a story about wearing my mask. There's cool masks. We can get different colors. We can decorate our masks. We even had an activity where they painted masks. Really good. The kids amaze me. Really, they do amaze me. And sanitizer. They are very comfortable with a sanitizer. We do use a non-toxic alcohol-free sanitizer, and it's much softer on the hands, and they don't mind the sanitizer at all. They actually like it. It's like a watery-based sanitizer, so they actually do really well with it. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's lovely. Some good news from a bad situation.
Yes.
And this was Almarie Mostert, the principal of Stepping Stones in Swakopmund. Now for your weather and tides, the coastal towns saw higher tide at about 5 minutes to 6 this morning and expected low tide at about 11:45. High tide expected again at about 6:15 tonight, and low tide expected just before past midnight. Walvis Bay saw sunrise at 52 minutes past 6 this morning and expect sunset at 2 minutes to 7 tonight. Maximum of 18 degrees Celsius with a west-southwesterly wind prevailing for Walvis Bay. For tomorrow, a maximum of 12 degrees Celsius and a minimum of 12 degrees Celsius and a maximum of 17 degrees Celsius. Walvis Bay saw sunrise at 8 minutes to 7 this morning and expect sunset at 2 minutes to 7 tonight. A maximum of 16 degrees Celsius with a westerly wind prevailing, and a minimum of 12 degrees Celsius and a maximum of 16 degrees Celsius for tomorrow. Henty's Bay saw sunrise at 7 minutes to 7 this morning and expect sunset at 1 minute to 7 tonight. A maximum of 17 degrees Celsius with a southwesterly wind prevailing. A minimum of 13 degrees Celsius and a maximum of 18 degrees Celsius expected for tomorrow. Moving further inland, Aranda saw sunrise at about 11 minutes to 7 this morning and expect sunset at 4 minutes to 6 to 7 tonight. A maximum of 27 degrees Celsius with a northwesterly wind prevailing. For tomorrow, a minimum of 12 degrees Celsius and a maximum of 28 degrees Celsius. Usako saw sunrise at 2 minutes to 7 this morning and expect sunset at 6 minutes to 7 tonight. A maximum of 36 degrees Celsius with a south-southeasterly wind prevailing. A minimum of 15 degrees Celsius and a maximum of 38 degrees Celsius for tomorrow. Karibab saw sunrise at 13 minutes to 7 this morning and expect sunset at 7 minutes to 7 tonight. Maximum of 35 degrees Celsius with a southerly wind prevailing, and for tomorrow, a minimum of 16 degrees Celsius and a maximum of 37 degrees Celsius. Lastly, Omaruru saw sunrise at 14 minutes to 7 this morning and expects sunset at 8 minutes to 7 tonight. A maximum of 36 degrees Celsius with a south-southwesterly wind prevailing. And lastly, for tomorrow, a minimum of 17 degrees Celsius and a maximum of 37 degrees Celsius for Omaruru. And that is your tides and weather for today and tomorrow. That unfortunately brings us to the end of another episode of Erongo Talk. We hope you caught our pop-up question, and if you don't win today, remember to check back in tomorrow for another chance at winning. Then you can also find us on our social media on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, or you can follow all the stories discussed earlier and so much more at www.erongo.com.na. That's www.erongo.com.na. Then you can get in touch with us for advertisement opportunities or to let us know what's happening in your community at 0811 7040. That's 0811 7040. And until next time, please remember to wear your mask, sanitize your hands, maintain social distancing. Just because the state of emergency has ended does not mean COVID-19 is not a threat to us anymore. Please stay safe. Please stay healthy. We'll see you again tomorrow. Bye.